I just wanted to have one quick slide around Weve. For those of you who don't know who Weve are, we are a joint venture which was set up by those three amazing shareholders, EE, O2 and Vodafone. And one of the guys, Sean, who's up next, is a chairman of our board, is actually works at O2. And the purpose of Weve was really to create a joint venture to capitalize on the scale of those three amazing owners. So almost overnight, where most startups have to start from scratch, almost overnight we started with access to about 80% of the UK's mobile population as an asset. So, really huge operation, which started very quickly. And the purpose of the business was to get into three main areas: to understand a combined mobile data set, to monetize that through mobile media channels, and lastly, to try and understand and lift the bonnet up really on sort of areas of mobile commerce like loyalty and payments. So that's where we are. That's why I'm here. Thanks to Adrian for kind of inviting me, really. So I think this is the stage in a mobile presentation where people get involved in a lot of number wanging and talk about how many million phones there are in the UK and how you spend more than 2 hours a day typically on a smartphone. And 71% of the UK population now has a smartphone, and they're accessing it at least 150 times a day. And all of those touch points mean there's a marketing opportunity, there's a marketing touch point. Whether it is from something like a utility, around the fact that most of you probably set your alarm on your phone this morning, you probably store your photos, your address book, but also fun media channels such as films and catching up on TV, catching up on Spotify, etc. So, not to mention, obviously, the social channels, and I know we were lucky enough to have Mr. Twitter here earlier. But really the big media story of the mobile phone is, of course, that 24/7 access that the mobile gives you to, particularly through 3G and 4G, to the internet, and everything that the internet is capable of delivering as a media channel. And I think it kind of ties on to businesses. So consumers are there, we're all there, and I think every time a new utility or a new service is added to a mobile phone, it gets taken up really easily. So I think as and when mobile payments are easily adopted on mobile phones, consumers are ready for it. They're telling us they're ready. You use an Oyster card to tap into the tube every day. So an extension of just putting your mobile phone down and paying for goods does not seem like it's too much of a stretch. Businesses aren't quite there yet. And I mean, here is just a kind of a small example of businesses that we think do this quite well. For those of you who have an Addison Lee account, I think they're a great operation. But generally, businesses aren't quite there, and a very scary figure is that over half of businesses in the UK still don't have a mobile-optimized site. So in terms of when we're talking about digital out-of-home and mobile working together, just be careful about whether we're going to be driving consumers to an experience that is suboptimal at the moment. And it's certainly an area that we are encouraging businesses to put a lot more effort into. And I think the reason that I love working in mobile is there is a touch point throughout the day. Because of all of those different areas and access points, you can talk about the benefit of mobile in the morning, mobile in the evening, throughout the day. And we've got some touch point charts that show. And again, if you're looking about selling outdoor and mobile together, we should start thinking about some understanding of when the right times of day. And I think Bruce mentioned, again, that time is the most important context for out of home. So, morning and afternoon peak feel like the most obvious times that mobile and digital out of home should be working together. And most of my time actually has been spent over the last sort of 3 months, once I got my head around what I'm doing, is talking to other media channels about how mobile can act as the glue or the connector and work alongside, and the different roles that digital out of home can bring to it. So, we're having conversations with TV around, for those of you who come to work on the tube or the train in the morning, what was once a metro moment has probably now become a mobile moment, whether people are, downloading newspaper content, they're catching up on TV or films from the night before. It really is a massive consumer change in habits. And, we know that there's been a migration of younger people away from traditional fixed time TV viewing. They're moving to time shifted. They're seeing TV or TV content on different screens. And how do we mobilize that? How does mobile work and help to interact and extend those audiences? Likewise, with print and radio, we can do really complex data matches where we understand people that are viewing digital assets of, say, the Times or Capital Radio, and then we can ping mobile messages out to that very same audience. So you're really doing a proper kind of magnification job from a media point of view. So we're collaborating a lot, and out of home obviously is why I've been asked to be here today. I love our out of home, I love mobile. The synergy between the two is obvious, and I mean, I've had so many conversations with people in agencies that just say, it just makes sense, right? You know, posters and mobile together, why wouldn't you do that? And that's great, but the next challenge is how do we get that over a line from sounding like it makes sense to actually proving that it makes sense for clients and agencies alike. So that's where we are. There are probably, I could have filled a chart with sort of 20 or 30 different reasons why digital out of home and mobile are great partners together, but I'm going to try and cover them. I give you a bit of a kind of context. I tried to sort of bucket it into 5 main areas, because the danger is I can kind of throw loads of information at you and you can take what you will from it. But you know, things like data, location and reach are certainly the key areas when we talked about it back at the office about what we could talk through today that I think I can bring on there. So I've got 5 challenges for all of you as an industry, and I know there's a difference between in here of suppliers, software, media owner, agency, specialists, but I think broadly speaking, these 5 challenges are pretty consistent as an industry to, you know, let's hope that next year this is twice as big a conference and a bigger venue, because we've all paid notice to this and we've all done some really exciting work. So, first thing is that feels like, and again, I'm going to talk to you about the fact that when I go into agencies, I'm having conversations with people who have also spoken to poster businesses, whether specialists or media owners, and try and see whether I think whether some of the areas that we could do better on. So the first is really understanding around what role you think mobile is going to bring to the digital campaign. And it's not enough really to just talk, we've talked about kind of, oh yeah, let's stick some mobile on it. And I hear that quite a lot from agencies, oh, we're thinking of doing some mobile and some outdoor. Well, they do very different things. So I think we really need to dig into what you want to get out of the mobile campaign. So primarily where this market sort of feels like it's settled at the moment, there is obviously search, you know, huge area, particularly for when you understand around the behaviors that people are getting involved in when they're out and about and they're consuming digital screens. The likelihood is search is going to be the biggest thing for them, because they want information and they want it quickly, they want it now. So try and understand what your proposition is to drive search. Social, you know, you've heard from Bruce today. You know, what are you guys doing that's going to extend and drive a conversation from a brand, from a poster in a very public place into a private place on mobile phone to somebody's social network? So again, very different thing. SMS and text marketing is actually the one thing that we own that marketplace in the UK. Very instant, very quick. Still probably only sort of 3 or 4 years old and finding its feet as a kind of an advertising medium. Display. Again, really since the launch of smartphones only 6 or 7 years ago, display on mobile is increasing massively. So, you know, are you having those conversations? Because it feels like the industry is mainly interacting with display-based advertisers more than anyone else. And then on the right, you kind of have, rather than sort of mobile media, you have mobile commerce. How are brands understanding about loyalty, around customer behaviors, around mobile payments? So, some interesting stuff that you may not have seen is around the utility. So we talked earlier around why consumers are already using mobile phones, because they're using them for hundreds of different things. But talking on a phone, which is an odd concept, is still the main utility of a mobile phone. So people are still using them to speak to other human beings, which is lovely to know. But the second most used utility on a mobile phone is actually text. So again, we probably haven't had any conversations with anyone in this room directly with a client around interacting and engaging a text and out-of-home campaign. So there's something, again, food for thought. If ever you're going back to the ranch and you want to have a conversation, we're happy to have those. But if you think, you know, where most of the industry, where most of your conversations are taking place, it's probably web. It's around mobile display. So some of the people and the businesses in this space, you know, actually quite a small amount of time is spent, and most online usage of a mobile phone is actually at home. It's in the home, not out of home. So it's quite interesting. If you look into the stats and you look around how mobile behaviors are being driven by media, then you can probably have a clear understanding of how you want to drive them using digital. So just to reflect that, as I said, smartphones are only 7 years old in the UK. So already that industry is worth £1 billion in the UK, which means it's the same size as out of home, significantly bigger than commercial radio. So that's a really scary acceleration of growth. But if you look at where that growth is being driven, actually, you looked at the chart earlier, people are spending more time on a mobile than they're spending on a PC or a laptop. But spend has not migrated. It's not quite got there yet. The industry is still set up to understand how cookie data drives display behaviors on PC and laptop, haven't quite grasped how to monetize and make the most of mobile. And when you equate that then back to the function in which people are spending the money, so this is true marketing as opposed to where people are, you look at that number, 60% is effectively going straight to Google, 23%, the majority of that's going to Facebook with a bit to Twitter, and then there's this massive long tail of businesses who are involved in display and SMS that's still only getting 20% of mobile revenues. And this is absolutely the growth area because that's where people are spending their time. They're looking at content, they're looking at news, they're looking at apps to understand where they need to catch the train, when the next bus is coming, the weather, etc. So for mobile generally, the display and SMS area is absolutely the area that's going to see massive explosion over the next few years. And we're kind of stuck in this, from an agency point of view, it feels like mobile's kind of sat in this performance activation bucket where you only actually pay for guaranteed clicks and views or acquisitions that you've driven. And actually, we feel that the time now is, with 35 million smartphones in the UK, that is a massive brand story. That makes it the biggest single entry media channel in the UK by some distance. So, there is the ability to hit huge audiences, millions of housewives, millions of 18 to 24-year-old men, millions of football fans for the World Cup, all in one go, all in one day, which nobody else can do. And digital out of home actually is probably the closest in terms of numbers. And I think you heard earlier around this concept of Channel 6. And if you guys sort of came together as an industry and did some joint stuff around, let's just get one client on board and absolutely monitor the hell out of it and see how we get on. I think you'd have the same story that mobile's trying to wrestle with at the moment, where we fit in this kind of, well, how many clicks did it drive? Well, it's kind of irrelevant because 2 million people saw it, and we know they saw it, and we've got reporting to prove when they looked at the advertising. So that's one of the conversations that we should be talking about. And this is a good example of when there was some planning from Mediacom, where they did a point-of-sale 6-sheet campaign for Lucozade Revive for the new brand, and then they backed that up with localized SMS text messaging, which is a call to action, try this bottle, and you can see some of the responses there, but overall there were 8% higher sales driven just by the out-of-home and mobile messaging working together, but 40% was the efficiency of the SMS marketing channel. So we're starting to build up case studies to prove that out-of-home and mobile works together, but we don't have enough. And until we get a few brave clients to step up and go, do you know what, it does absolutely make sense, and I am going to risk putting a bit of money on these two together, I am going to make sure that the two messages tie in, we're not going to have enough of these case studies to prove other clients to get on board. So the second bit of advice is around data. And there's quite a lot of smoke and mirrors, if I'm honest, in data at the moment. Data feels like the area that the mobile industry is hanging its hat around, because obviously we do have access to many data points. And in fact, the mobile phone tends to be able to collate and distribute 10 times more data than a PC, right? Which is huge because it does all these other contextual location-based things. But pretty much every touch point in a day, when you're traveling, when you're surfing the net, when you're interacting on social, there is a data touch point being created that is really useful to a marketer at whatever stage of the day that you go through. And really, it's around the challenge for you guys not being at this party is when you're speaking to mobile partners, try and interrogate the level at which their data works. So at the top of that chart, we talk about first-party data. Do you have genuine data around the customers that you have? Weve, Google, Facebook, Twitter. You then have customer data, so when a client like a Sainsbury's will give us access to people that they know are their customers, we then take that data and mirror that with a mobile campaign. That's a data match business. That's probably the second most valuable stage. Third-party data is when you use one third-party supplier like an Experian or Call Credit or a CACI. And then at the bottom, you've got the kind of inferred model data, and that's where a lot of people play. And we have a kind of a saying internally, I'm not sure I should say on stage, but it's algorithms are like arseholes, everyone's got one, right? So that's the problem at the moment, that everybody has an algorithm, you're not allowed to see what's in it, it's a real black box, and often it's actually a load of correlated publicly available data merged together to provide you with a campaign that you probably could have done yourself. So I would ask you to make sure that you interrogate data partners to understand where the data comes from, because there is a real difference in value to all of these different data sets. And in this kind of new data economy and agencies, it feels like this is where price points and negotiation are starting to differentiate around the value of the data. So digital out-of-home and out-of-home generally has made some massive strides here. Certainly since I started in 1995 working at Clear Channel. Can I just have a show of hands? Is anyone under 40 in this room?
Yes.
With people whose hands are up, does anyone know what OSCAR stands for?
Outdoor Site Classification.
Mate, you were 40 about 30 years ago. I got a prize for my old boss later. So, yeah, there's been an incredible migration of what was effectively gross to net to like Uber net. And I know that when I sold out of home, I was forever kind of having a go at other media channels that were absolutely taken as gold standard and planned around, and yet Poststar and Outdoor Research was only kind of cobbled on the back as a post-rationalization tool for what you had bought anyway. So I think when we can start having some grown-up conversations between what Root says and what our data says, and we might have access to probably 30 million location touch points in a day. There's some amazingly rich data that we can do that no other media channel genuinely can touch. So I think we should definitely be having conversations around this. And we've had 2 or 3 conversations in the last month around how we can help educate the planning of outdoor campaigns based around our understanding of data and our understanding of our first-party data and where those people are going and where they tend to be making most of their journeys. One quick example of just kind of, I know we talk about data a lot as industries, so this is quite an interesting data campaign that we did. So we did it for Windows Phone. Don't know if anyone's got a Windows Phone, but they look quite funky. So they're kind of done in, I've got OCD, I could never have one. So they're all very different shaped cubes and various different parts of your screen showing different entry points to your phone. So they're not like the linear nature of icons on a smartphone or an Apple iPhone. And their insight to us was, they're quite Marmite, but if people have a play with them, they'll either love them or they'll hate them, and if they love them, they'll move across to them. So we were able to find a group of people whose phone contract was up for renewal, so it was 17 months old, so they were ripe for a phone upgrade. We knew people already had Windows phones, so we took those out and only sent them to people that had other phone sets. We then sent them a message to click on this link to see what your phone would look like as a Windows phone. It then had an emulator that pulled in all of your data feeds like photos and Facebook just into a homepage, so it showed them what your homepage would look like as a Windows phone. At the back end of that campaign, we were then able to show that in the next 4 weeks, over 2,500 people actually physically changed their phone. Right, so the data that's available to the mobile industry, the data that we're challenged to do on every single campaign we do is massive. So just be aware of, these are the kind of conversations that other media channels are having, and that's kind of what you're selling against. Third area is location. And location feels like the bit that's exciting retailers and brands the most, particularly the real-time location. Can I fire a message to somebody when they're walking past a shop that makes them do an about turn and go straight in, right? My view on this is it feels a little fanciful, and again, the conversations that most of the outdoor industry has been having is around using display advertising. Now, there is a fairly obvious observation here that people do not walk down the high street surfing through newspaper sites or surfing through holiday sites or anything else. It's generally quick grasps of information for the likes of Google, Maps, directions, etc. So that engagement that the out-of-home industry is starting to have with mobile feels like it's not right for the real time. It's right for home. So when you can find out what people have gone past your site and then what they end up doing when they go back to the house and they've got more time to surf more rich content, they're the kind of conversations that we need to have. So let's have some grown-up conversations around proper location based around where we know people have been and that people have driven past poster sites, and start going to clients for this. So this is an example of a really kind of grown-up data match we did for an FMCG brand based around supermarkets that allowed us to take into account propensity to visit these stores, but also whether people had visited them in the last month, in which case they were kind of like a floating voter. So, there's no point in Sainsbury's putting an ad message here where you'd have to drive past 2 or 3 other supermarket chains to get there. Actually, the key battleground there is around sort of the merged area. So again, we can provide that information for the out-of-home industry to help you guys really back up some grown-up conversations. And as I mentioned, I think SMS is the right tool that we should be talking about. If you want to get people to fire a message and do something and change their behavior and surf a site straight away, SMS is more of a correct tool than display. And I'm aware that my time's running out, so I'm just going to go through. This is an interesting example of what we did with a location brand. So we were able to fire out a campaign which looked at the kind of the location footprint of a typical DIY store. We're not allowed to brand it because it wasn't cleared for the research purposes. We sent a message out based around a sale that was going to be on that following weekend, and then we watched every phone that received that message was observed to see if it went into the DIY store. And at the end of it, we did a control area, and it was something like 350% more likely to have gone into the store. So we know that posters drive behaviors. We know that posters drive traffic. We know that mobile advertising does the same thing. So again, it just gives us more information that there's an obvious marriage to be talked about here. And kind of where this goes for me, the logical extension is around the ability of mobiles to send out a geolocated message, which is a branded message, in this instance, a voucher for a packet of chewing gum. This is a mock-up. This hasn't happened, by the way. So that would then be created with a unique barcode. That barcode would then work through the point-of-sale system, through the mobile phone. So the kind of the future of where out-of-home and mobile can work together is really an exciting one. Context, I think, has probably been mentioned. I hope it's been mentioned a couple of times today, because that really is key to the way that I think digital out-of-home differentiates itself from, do we call it analog or just papers? I don't know. But normal out-of-home that isn't digital. Traditional, there we go. Everything's traditional, it isn't digital. The levels of context that you can use with digital screens based around proper planning, proper day parts, etc., is significantly different to a traditional outdoor campaign. So here's a campaign we did for Time. It was for Avicii. For those of you who know that, it's a song called Wake Me Up. We sent that message out at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. It's kind of a bit ravey. We had a 400% high opening rate of that campaign. Now, I don't know whether people have woken up and hated the message or whether they're still out and opened it while they're out on the piss still. But that was an example of we used physical time to send a message which was relevant. That middle campaign was around Foster's. The consumer insight was that sales go up 4x when the temperature goes over 24 degrees. So that was, again, it was a temperature-activated campaign. It only got sent when the temperature reached a certain level. And the John Lewis ad on the end was just a content distribution where the Hare and the Bear ad got sent out to an X Factor audience 2 minutes after the ad had gone live, saying, hey, did you check it out? It's just premiered in X Factor. Have a look at our great new creative here. And again, how can we think about mirroring with those? Because we can control our day parts, digital should be able to control its day parts. And this is a mock-up of what a Dyson Air campaign did look like on Deco and could have looked like on a mobile campaign. So really, how can we activate that where, when the temperature hits sort of 25, 26 degrees, we can then activate that message. And, you think about the fact that how much money has already been laid down for May, June, and July for ice cream ads on the TV. This is the point I was going to then look outside and say it's pissing down. It's just started going sunny at this point, which is a little bit annoying. But there is a load of money has been laid down into contextual media channels, which aren't going to be contextual. And there's a massive advantage for us as channels to make the most of these. And there's exciting developments with Deco and their smart screens, and probably got the most press for those on Am screen. Feels like they've had the most press recently around doing something a bit different around planning and buying of outdoor, and really buying into the whole concept of real-time, real-life data for purchasing habits, which is really exciting. And then I'm kind of on time, but I wanted to leave with a few challenges really for you guys as an industry to kind of ponder. And it's not for me to suggest what the answers are here, but it's what I think are the challenges for both sides really. And the first is how is this whole digital out of home? Is it scalable, or is it still a kind of a is it possible to do a campaign? So Mr. Bleakley invited me to the Ocean Awards at the IMAX. Earlier this year, and what I was amazed by was probably 50–60% of the award entries had an element of interaction with a mobile phone. So I think there was a game where you flicked on your mobile at the screen and you threw snowballs. There was some live interaction through a mobile phone with a satellite link out in the Caribbean somewhere with British Airways. So there's some amazing examples. So as an industry, you're kind of already doing some of this stuff, but that's at one amazing pedestrianised, fully moving kind of site in Westfield. And actually, you guys represent hundreds of thousands of different sites across the whole of the UK. So, how do you scale these things up to be not just a stunt, but actually to be a proper, inclusive campaign that people actually see on the street rather than read about on Twitter? Challenge one. Challenge two is around the whole concept of content. So, you have the unique ability to position and distribute content in a very different way on a digital screen than you do on a traditional screen. And speaking to my old colleague Louise earlier, which is around the concept of how do you start selling it a little bit differently? So there's a business in mobile that just chase after TV spend on the basis that many 16 to 24-year-olds are starting to have different TV habits, and they're watching YouTube. They're watching channels on YouTube. And they're making a really good go of actually trying to target TV money. So, and we talked about it for years as an industry in outdoor, where how do we try and take TV money because we've got lots of 1634s. But actually, you can take TV money by using TV content because effectively it is video content in a very public, very giant place. And particularly you guys have seen the Nike World Cup campaign, and I saw that for the first time on my mobile. How amazing would that be on a digital 96 sheet during the World Cup? It's just an amazing bit of content. You don't need sound. It's the biggest stars in the world playing football while the World Cup's on. It feels to me like it's an obvious, how are we getting trailers into people's hands on their mobile phone? How are we getting little teaser clips of 20 seconds of songs that are new to be released that are sent out as a kind of a sound clip that people can listen to and go, do you know what, I'm going to buy that? And they take it from the poster site and then it's on the mobile phone and it goes with them in that untethered environment. And the third is around kind of third-party tools. As an industry, iBeacons will open up the possibility for you guys to get involved and drive traffic directly onto a mobile phone. So already, you talk about the likes of, there's augmented reality, there's QR codes, there's different people already doing stuff in this space, which is great. But as an industry, you can probably take ownership of that yourselves a little bit. My challenge to you would be that it feels like people feel that it's essential to have a poster driving traffic onto a mobile phone, but mobile phone can actually drive traffic onto itself by SMS or display. So the challenge is we need to make sure that the message from poster to mobile makes sense. I've heard a lot, in pretty much every meeting I have, the first guys, when you sit down and you say, what are you guys doing? And we talk about mobile, and they go, that's really interesting. So why don't we geofence some billboards? And it's kind of okay, but it's not good enough. Out of home is about fixed locations. Your poster sites don't move, people move past them. The beauty and strength of the mobile phone is that they move with the people. Right? So the location of the phone is always what the location of the person is. So we need to have a bit of an understanding of, I would like to see the phone actually mobilizing digital screens. And I know, I think, is Ian in here? Where's Chapman? So these guys have been doing some good stuff around recognition of number plates. And I know that the AmScreen guys have been doing some stuff around eye tracking. So that's where the screens are actually being activated by other people rather than allowing other things to be activated by the screens. So it's an interesting area. And I think, again, I know loads of you are involved. We need to make sure we get the right digital environments. Now, I don't know what the right digital environments are. I've had conversations with my old boss when they're around about cinema, because cinema feels like logically there's time spent there. Effectively, that is a 6-foot by 4-foot iPhone. Right? It's touch screen. You can play with it. You can touch it. There's the famous DailyDOOH campaign for Cadbury's cream eggs when you had to bash the eggs. Malls. All of these areas just feel like, why wouldn't you? And without wanting to sound really obvious, there's shitloads of people, and they've all got mobile phones. It's kind of, let's do something cleverer than just saying let's geofence. And then my last two slides are, first of all, be careful what you wish for. I think it's great that we're having conversations around doing things together, but mobile is a very, very different industry, as I've found over the last 6 months to out of home. You don't want to be trapped into we have a load of conversations where we start with, we're Weve, we've got access to 20 million people. They go, that's awesome. Can you target women? Yes. Can you target women in the north? Yes. Can you target women between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Yes. What about in Scarborough? Yes. And you end up sending out a campaign that hits, 32 people and costs £14.70, right? And that's kind of where outdoors always done an amazing job of saying, no, it's a campaign. This campaign hits this many people, and you can take that. So just be careful, because if you do want to play in this area, you will be encouraged to get much more granular. And that whole sort of ethos of McDonald's breakfast just want to advertise from 7 till 9 in the morning. Well, you need to be ready to actually allow them to do that. And if you do, understand that it's going to make you significantly less money than if they just did a normal scrolling kind of 1 of 5 slots across 2 weeks. I would suggest, far be it for me to criticise Sir Alan, that you really don't want to get involved in a cost per click, cost per acquisition, because it is almost completely the antithesis of what outdoor is, which is around big, bold, public statements of branding, as opposed to sitting in like an activation bucket. But please feel free, if you want to get involved, your yields may go down a touch. Automation and programmatic buying is kind of a key word. And again, the danger there is what outdoor does amazingly is sell the power of environment. And I won't go into name names, but we've all got our own favorite site, and not everyone's favorite site is the same. It's based around the emotion, the human emotion of building up what that site means, what that site means to the advertiser that sits in the poster site. And And then there's still a big difference between London. Do we still call it upcountry? I know it's a really random phrase that Outdoor used to call not London. So there's a big gulf, right? So in London, it's amazing. You take a client on a site tour around London, happy days. They love digital out of home. You take them around insert shit town north of London, and it's not going to be a song, right? So, you know, we know that Manchester's great. We know there are really strong assets in Glasgow and Liverpool, and they are starting to spread out. But there's still a massive amount of the UK, and you can't talk about yourself as a national medium until they're all covered off. You know, you have a challenge that all of the best sites are now digital, so you know you need to make the most of that. Digital out of home is still not bought as digital should be, as far as I can gather. I know there are lots of people trying to make that work. It's not quite there yet, but you know you need to be understanding around how you sell proper audiences, day parts, and selling around all those other media channels. My last two, sorry, so I realised my time's up. I got a big red thing. Henry Ford was asked before, when he invented cars, why did you invent the cars? Why didn't you just ask people? And he said, if I'd have asked people what they wanted, they'd have said faster horses. So I just wanted to say that sometimes you have to create things that people don't know they want. And the future of, what I believe the future for digital out of home and mobile together is the whole customer journey. It's not just around sending out media messages, although that's kind of a lot of it. Is how do we understand that media messages delivered in the right place around the complex location tools that you and mobile as an industry have probably the best access to? How does that translate into localized and personalized coupons, vouchers, offers which are time-linked, time-sensitive? And then obviously at the last point, hopefully that then all takes place with a payment mechanic at the end. So yeah, I mean, look, my view is it totally makes sense. Of course it does. Most of my conversations with other media channels that I've enjoyed the most have obviously been with Outdoor, although I'm maybe a little biased. But I think there's great grounds to be had, and I think if we can learn some of those lessons, and you guys can come up with some solutions to some of those, and that's not a UK site, by the way. If you try and find a site where person with mobile in front of billboard, Google doesn't do so well for you. But I think that absolutely there's a potential for a really great marriage. So that's me. Thank you.